All right, my friends, MacroPulse quiz. We're going September 23, 2025. Four questions. Should be easy. First question, let me zoom in for you. What is the most recent month-over-month delta in total non-farm payrolls? You don't need to do something fancy inside of Excel or FRED. You can go directly to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In fact, let me show you where you find that report. If you go to bls.gov, it's so important. It's always right here. Okay, the payroll report, which they call the employment situation report, it's going to be right there. It gives you that number plus 22,000. If you want to dig a little bit deeper, you can look at the PDF of that report. I look at it all the time. This is what I sleep with. And you get right at the top there, total non-farm payroll changed little in August, plus 22,000. Now, the chart gives you the visualization of that, and you have some summary stats over here. In the household data, there's no 22,000 there because this is from the household survey. We're looking for non-farm payrolls from the establishment survey. That's in the second one, total non-farm. Boom. All right, so that's question one, easy from the graph. Now, I just took a screenshot of that. What you could do is inside of FRED, you can grab the data that you need. The FRED ticker is pay amps. I don't expect you to know that. So how would you get that? Let's go back to the browser. Let's go to FRED. There's a few ways that you could find this. All right, so if you type in non-farm payrolls, as I've said before, the FRED search bar isn't great. Sometimes it works total non-farm private payroll employment, all employees total non-farm. That happens to be the one that we need, but it's hard to tell, right? Because you got this here and it's nice and it's total non-farm and then you have everything indented. So what I really need is a way to find that report. Let's go back to FRED and you go to the release calendar. Now I'll give you a little secret. The secret name for that payroll survey is employment situation. All right, so inside of there are two tables. One from the household survey, they call up homes and they ask them, are you working? Are you not? They call up companies, the establishment survey, how many people are working in what industries, what hours, etc. Total non-farm payrolls is from that establishment survey. Do we use seasonally or non-seasonally adjusted? Colloquially, anytime we're talking about these numbers, they're seasonally adjusted. That's what we've been doing with my students in the class. Unless otherwise said, that's what they're referring to. So I'm going to expect you to know that table B1. Now, take a look at the way it's indented total non-farm at the top. Look at the way the BLS reports it total non-farm at the top and then indented. So we know how to get this. Click on that one. P-A-Y-E-M-S. P-A-Y-E-M-S. So that's how you would find it, okay? You could try to Google it. You can go to FRED and you got the release. Now, I want the changes over that, not the total number that are working, but the change in those month over month delta. And just be careful. I didn't say percent delta. So I want the change in that. How do I know which one it is? Go to FRED, data manipulations, and I want the change, CHG, not PCH, not percent change. It's out monthly. I didn't want all the data, right? Because I just wanted the most recent one. So I grabbed a couple of years. I put 1/1/2024, and when you get data, boom, boom, last period is 22K. That's as of September 17th of this writing. All right, so that's question one. Question number two, let me zoom in. During which month was COVID's impact on total non-farm payrolls the worst? Same series. So what we could do is go and get that same data, but it's during COVID, right? So let me kick it back a little bit. I kicked it back to 1/1/2019. You go and grab all that data. And where was it the worst? You can go and you can find the min and the max, and you can do all sorts of fancy stuff. Right there is April. We could do something better with that, and I'll show you in another question. But I think the easiest thing is just a screen clip off of FRED. Let me show you back at the website so you see how I got something like that. There's the non-farm payrolls that we used. Okay. Now I want the change in that. So let me edit the graph. Let me go to change in thousands and let me zoom in about 10 years or so. And now I have a snapshot of COVID. And when you hover, 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 oh my goodness, minus 20,471. I took a screenshot of that, put that here for you. So we know that during which month was it the worst? April 2020. All right, question number 3. Let's zoom in. What was the largest month-over-month delta in total non-farm payrolls since the beginning of the COVID recession? Again, so it's the same series, saving you time in certain times in terms of this quiz. PAYEMS. Again, it's the change. Again, it's monthly. And again, I'm zooming in from 2019 forward. I want that change. I want to see which was the largest month of that delta. All right, so I have a lot of different series here. I can see that if you do that same screenshot, it was in June 2020, but maybe I could be a little bit better, a little bit smarter about that. So what I want to do is reference the max function. Now, I want to find the max of those values. You could go hardcore and you just click and drag, but we want to leverage some tools that for easy automation purposes. I'm going to create a table. Don't forget how you create a table. Once you get it from FRED, you're going to highlight Control Shift and down arrow. You highlight all that. And then once that's there, you're going to go to Insert and you're going to create a table. You're going to click Table. I already created mine, so that's not available. How do I know it worked? Go to Table Design and right there. I've named it question 3. That's the name of my table. I can call it whatever I want. So what I want to do is take the max of question 3, but I have 2 columns in question 3 table. I have the date and the value. I want the value, right? The maximum of that change. And that was 4, 6, 3, 1. And that's exactly what hovering over the graph gave us. 4, 6, 3, 1. June 2020, which was right there. Question number 4. What was the Z-score for the month-over-month delta in the total non-farm payrolls during the month of the COVID recession, where the drop in those payrolls was the worst? I want you to use the entire data series available in FRED. So you got to break this down a little bit. What are we looking for? We're looking for a Z-score. Okay, so Z-scores, if you remember, are the observation minus the average divided by the standard deviation. That means we need to compute average and standard deviation. Over what period? It says use the entire data series available on FRED. So we're going to have to go back and grab all of the PAYEMS data, change monthly, and you could leave A4 blank and I'll give you everything. It goes all the way back to 1939 February. Okay, so you can grab all that data. Now what you need to do, though, is read the rest of this. Month-over-month delta, yeah, we got that. Total non-farm payrolls, PAYEMS, we got that. During the month of the COVID recession, where the drop in those payrolls was the worst. So if we want to automate this, we got to start thinking, was COVID the worst? Right? Because if COVID was the worst, then I could just use the max or the min operator that we were using before over the whole data series. If COVID wasn't the worst, then I need to start doing a conditional statement, right? I would have to truncate my search. So let's go back to our series here. This is the total non-farm payrolls. I zoomed in 10 years. Let's go max. And I mean, by far, that was the worst. Look at that, right? There's nothing like that. So we can effectively say this question is not just about the COVID recession. This question is about during the worst month, delta, month over month, in the entirety of the history that we have data available, what was the Z-score? All right. So with that in mind, we can start using an average function to get to that mean, and then a standard deviation to get to that, and then using the min and the max, etc. But let's make it fast again. We want to use a table. I created this table. I called it PAYEMS after the moniker. Okay, so I'm going to take the average of that table, but what row of that table? The value column, pardon me. What column of that table? The value column of that table. And remember how you doing these, right? If you got average, Now, I want to reference the table. If you start putting it in there, it shows it up for you. And then just put in the bracket, and it gives you which columns are available. There's only two. So I want the value on that. You click a tab, and it pops up. You close the bracket, and easy peasy. All right, so you get 124. Do the same thing for standard deviation. In our case, we have a sample, so we're going to do stdev.s, that same table and the value. So the average growth in payrolls is around 124. Now, the units are in thousands. See, it says thousands. So 124 actually means 124,000. Go back to this, right? This is really weird with this go over here. So let's look at like 5 years. All right, so now the scaling's a little bit better. Minus 200,000 plus 200,000. And you can see lately we've been in that genre, pardon me, 124,000. So, we've been somewhere in that 100, 200 range, not bad. But when you start going back to including COVID, look at the scaling. It's just a different order of magnitude. So how does that order of magnitude impact your sample statistics? Think about a histogram. It's probably huge, lots of variation. I measure the variation one way, standard deviation, which was a redonkulous 702. I mean, that's just astronomical. Let's put that into context with the z-score. So I want to compute the min. Why is that? Because I want it as the worst. And I know the worst was negative, so I could use the min. It's the smallest negative, all right, the most negative value, the worst that you can have. So let's do the min on the table payums, the min of what column of the table, the value again. That is minus 20471. Just to make sure that we understand what that is and it matches everything that we were talking about, I want to find the date of that. So for that, we'll use index and match. We've played with this before. I want to find the row associated with that really bad number. And then based upon that row, I want to call back the column value from the table associated with that row. We can break it up into parts, all right? So let's match that number. I'm going to look for that number in this table, in that column, and I want it to be exact 0. So not in the rows of the Excel spreadsheet, in the table, I want to call row 975. All right, so now what date is associated with row 975 from that table? I'm going to do index, and I'm going to call back to the payms. I'm just going to have that entire table, and I want to find the row number. Now, what I could do a couple things. Notice there's another option in there. See how it shows up underneath? I could figure out what was the column value from that, the first column. And two, I try to get to the first column, which was a date. That doesn't look like a date. It is a date. Format it. It's a date. The way Excel stores all that data information is as a number that us humans can't read, but you could just format it. I did all that for you right here, embedded. That makes sense. That's what we found before. April 2020 was the worst month ever from the job market. Okay, so I want to use that information now to construct. Let me get rid of this so it's not distracting to you. The z-stat. So the z-stat is give me the value, subtract off the average, take that chunk and divide it by the standard deviation. Minus 29. April 2020 was 29 standard deviations away from the average payroll growth. So you take that 124 average and you got to go to the left 702 29 times. That's how bad the magnitude of this. Usually we think of, a 3 sigma, a 4 sigma event as being something that's astronomical. This is 29 sigma. Just for giggles, I went ahead and I computed the best. And that was max of those payroll changes. And that was occurring in June of 2020, and that was a z-score of 6. So think about the asymmetry there. You take that average and you're going 6 sigma up, which is huge, which is big, right? Again, we're thinking like maybe a 3 or 4 sigma is enormous. So we had 6 sigma to the right, but 29 sigma to the left. So there was definitely an asymmetry, which we saw from this graph here, right? Look at the amount that it goes down to the amount it comes back up. So that COVID jobs recession was unique and it hurt. Macro data hopes. I hope that helps.